welcome to today's webinar hosted by the National Partnership for Student Success Support Hub, based at the Everyone Graduate Center at the Johns Hopkins University School of Education. We're really excited to be here with you all today to share a bit more on the National Partnership for Student Success Higher Education Coalition and how to get involved in the recent call to action from the U.S. Department of Education to engage more colleges and universities, as well as college students in preschool through grade 12 student support roles in a way that's high impact. We'll spend our time today. First, I will pass it over to my colleague, Mariko Yoshisato-Kevi, who will provide some more information on the call to action from the U.S. Department of Education, as well as what it looks like and how to join the NPSS Higher Education Coalition, as well as some of the resources that we at the NPSS Support Hub have available to institutions looking to get involved in this work or increase their involvement in this work. Following that, we'll go into a panel discussion featuring some great speakers from Texas A&M University, Kingsville, New York University, and Grand Valley State University. And following that, we'll have a Q&A and some closing information on how to get involved. With that, I will pass it over to you, Mariko.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Mariko Yoshisato-Kevi, Senior Program Officer and Director of Higher Education Partnerships for the National Partnership for Student Success. So here we'd just like to share a little bit about the origins of the NPSS. We know that the pandemic had significant impacts on all students, educators, families, and communities, and we know what's needed to help recover from the impacts of the pandemic as well. That includes high-quality, evidence-based tutoring, as well as other individual and small group instructional supports to help support academic recovery. However, we also know that support must extend beyond the academic space, and these relationships must be with trusting adults and near peers that can support young people's social, emotional, and mental health needs as well. The NPSS also focuses on integrated student supports that address a range of student and family needs, both within school and in out-of-school time programs. That said, we also emphasize that support doesn't just exist within the P through 12 time span. We want to ensure that students have the resources needed to develop and implement their post-secondary plans as well, whatever their pathways might be. So knowing these needs, we also understand a key challenge, and that is that states, school districts, and nonprofits are very invested in these types of supports for P12 students, however, might understandably face many challenges when it comes to staffing programs as needed to provide the people-powered supports that can encourage young people's success and thriving. Additionally, we know that organizations might need support in identifying and aligning their programs to the highest quality standards, particularly when we think about scaling programs at a broader level, both within communities and nationally. So moving forward, the Biden-Harris administration responded to these needs and challenges by launching the National Partnership for Student Success. And in the 2022 State of the Union, President Biden called on more people to serve in key roles to support P12 students as tutors, mentors, and in other critical positions. Then in July of 2022, the White House officially launched the National Partnership for Student Success to support the call to action. Additionally, the president set a specific goal of engaging an additional 250,000 adults in NPSS-aligned roles by 2025. As you may already know, the NPSS is a public-private partnership between the U.S. Department of Education, AmeriCorps, and the Everyone Graduate Center at Johns Hopkins University, where we operate the NPSS Support Hub. We really emphasize local determination of student needs and help uplift and cultivate collaborations that bring together colleges and universities with P12 schools and districts, as well as nonprofit organizations to provide the people-powered supports based on evidence of what works and what has high impact in our field. And some of those key roles are represented here. So we won't dive into the specifics. You can learn more on the NPSS website, but the 5 key support areas aligned with the NPSS are academic tutors, student success coaches as kind of a combination between a tutor and a mentor, as well as wraparound and integrated student support coordinators and post-secondary transition coaches, in addition to mentors. And these are the key roles that the NPSS strives to help fill to help meet the president's goal of engaging an additional 250,000 caring adults in youth support in and out of school. As we mentioned, we also know that organizations could benefit from support in helping to sustain, launch, improve, create, and innovate around these types of student support programs. So the NPSS Support Hub, based at Hopkins, provides no-cost technical assistance to organizations that seek it out in partnership with the key national organizations that you see on the screen here. Those organizations are considered leaders in their field and offer robust guidance to help institutions of higher ed, P-12 districts, nonprofits, and others to really emphasize the programming that's needed around the key NPSS-aligned roles. Next. As we mentioned, the NPSS engages a number of organizations that also support the work. Just quickly on the slide, you see the broad network of networks that's engaged with our project. These are supporting champions of the NPSS and convene on a monthly basis to provide guidance, networking, and other types of supportive efforts that help forward the work. Now we come to the current priority, and that is to engage colleges, universities, and college students in the work of the NPSS. While this is truly an all-in effort to engage all adults in youth-supporting roles, research shows that college students really offer a key lever of support for young people in their communities, and this work is mutually beneficial for both the college students as well as the youth receiving services, be that tutoring, mentoring, or other types of supports. So our goal is to really increase the number of college students serving in NPSS-aligned roles. And to do that, the U.S. Department of Education recently released a Dear Colleague letter calling on post-secondary institutions to take action in this space. They can set a public goal to either use at least 15% of federal work-study funds for community service over the next 2 years, devoting an increase, any of that increase in federal work-study roles to support the NPSS-aligned roles in schools or out-of-school time programs. Or higher ed institutions can commit to significantly increasing the number of post-secondary students that they will newly place in these roles. So while federal work study is a great existing pathway to create opportunities and jobs for college students in P-12 spaces, we also know that higher ed institutions have many pathways to community engagement, be that through internship programs, credit-bearing courses, or other types of paid positions based on existing infrastructure and programs. So we also heavily encourage colleges to build on that existing support. We also ask that colleges share their data with the NPSS on the number of post-secondary students serving in these roles, largely so that we can understand the baseline of how many adults we have supporting in these positions now, and then help document, celebrate, and uplift progress towards helping to meet the president's goal. We also provide support in mobilizing colleges and universities to engage their campus communities and their broader regional communities in the NPSS initiatives. And so as you might think about joining the Higher Ed Coalition, we encourage you to think about some key dimensions of implementation concerns, which our panelists will be speaking to, but just to provide a quick overview, a goal for your campus, it's really important to engage campus colleagues. And so one of the things that we emphasize is consulting your administrators and your leadership, be them vice presidents or vice chancellors or directors in relevant offices for support. That might be student affairs, offices for student success or student employment, alongside community engagement, enrollment services, or financial aid. So these are all critical collaborators to be thinking about as we encourage you to engage in the Higher Ed Coalition. We also encourage you to consult coordinators of existing programs on your campus. So again, we know that many through AmeriCorps. And so these are all great existing pathways to engage more students in these types of roles. And lastly, as your messaging around this type of initiative is really important, we want to encourage mindfulness around the fact that this is a completely voluntary but heavily encouraged initiative with support from the White House. And so this is largely an aspirational effort. We know that many universities and colleges had very strong community engaged P-12 support programs before the pandemic and largely faced shared struggles around continuing to staff and grow those programs in the following years. And so this is really an effort to help universities mobilize to get back to meet or potentially even exceed pre-pandemic numbers of your college students that are supporting young people in your broader community. Again, we also know that this is a mutually beneficial effort, and we really provide resources to help on all dimensions of this type of work, both for colleges and universities, nonprofits, as well as school districts and others that you seek to collaborate with. And again, you don't need to create something new. So as you're reaching out for technical assistance or tapping into resources provided by the NPSS Hub, please keep in mind that these serve to help bolster your existing strengths and your existing infrastructure and resources to fund or provide credit for these types of opportunities at your campus. That said, if you're excited to innovate something new, we also very much encourage you to create pathways to community engagement that maybe your campus and region haven't seen before. Just to provide a few key notes on the resources offered by the NPSS Support Hub, in addition to the no-cost technical assistance, we provide matching support. So if your institution or nonprofit is looking to connect with others in your region, we are able to assist in building connections between higher ed institutions, schools and districts, and nonprofits throughout the country to help build those bridges to engaging more college students in opportunities in your region. We also offer webinars and other types of events that will help dive into the specifics of implementation questions. So these things might get at funding sources. So not only leveraging federal work study, but also AmeriCorps funds or other types of initiatives that you might have at your campus or in your region. We also explore credit-bearing options like internship opportunities and how to leverage experiential learning courses and community-engaged learning for this work. We dive into thinking about transportation issues and how to navigate that in your community, drawing on existing transportation options or innovating new ones. And we think about the timeline around planning for a 2-year effort, hopefully starting with your campus this summer or fall. And again, if you go to our website, you'll find all these resources already provided, both in our high impact tutoring higher ed playbook offered by the National Student Support Accelerator, one of our lead technical assistance providers, as well as the NPSS's own college and university partnership and implementation toolkit. Alongside these other toolkits, we provide district partnership guidance, as well as program spotlights of examples of institutions already doing this work well, as well as voluntary quality standards to help your institution understand how to align your work with the highest quality based on the effort that you aim to build, be that tutoring or post-secondary transition coaching, or whatever types of P-12 support roles you seek to offer. I also want to emphasize that we encourage you and your colleagues to sign up for an upcoming webinar where we'll talk more about implementation strategies. And you can do that via the links provided in the chat and access all these resources on the NPSS website. Lastly, we just want to emphasize again that this is an effort to celebrate progress, so not perfection. We really emphasize data sharing to, again, document baselines and growth so we can understand where your institution is starting and then how you're growing over the next 2 years. Also, as you're considering joining the Higher Ed Coalition, we invite you to share your own program spotlights. So stories of success and bright spots that the NPSS can help uplift alongside our professional learning communities and supporting champions to help elevate great practices that we know are already in place across the country. And lastly, the NPSS offers press opportunities, chances for amplifying your work, as well as recognition events that are forthcoming. And with that, please again turn to the chat for key links, but we will move right along to our panel where I know our wonderful speakers are going to provide more insights based on the great work that they're already doing as members of the Higher Ed Coalition. Kate?
Thank you so much for that great overview, Mariko. I'm really excited for this next section of our webinar, in which we'll hear from folks who are actively working on this work in the field, and many of whom have been doing this for many years. I'm really excited to introduce a panel consisting of representatives of 3 higher education institutions who have already joined the National Partnership for Student Success Higher Education Coalition and set public goals to either increase the percentage of federal work-study funding that they use to compensate students in NPSS-aligned roles, or significantly increase the number of students on their campus who are placed in NPSS-aligned roles supporting P-12 students. We're really excited for this. On our panel, first, we have Raul Cavazos, who is the director of the Office of Student Financial Aid at Texas A&M University at Kingsville. We have Stephen Hodis, who is the executive director of the GV Next Ed Collab at Grand Valley State University, which operates a number of education programs, including the K-12 Connect academic support program. Jason Schultz is director of the Office of Federal Service Programs at New York University, which oversees several of the university's P-12 support programs, including America Reads, America Counts, and Jumpstart. Dr. Rito Silva is Vice President of Enrollment Services and Student Affairs at Texas A&M University, Kingsville, where he oversees a number of departments, including admissions, financial aid, student affairs, and campus recreation. So really excited to have this great panel with us today. So my first question is really for each of our panelists to get some background on the work that you're already doing and what you hope to be doing in the near future. So we know that there are many ways that this work can happen and many different models that can work well. Please tell us a bit about your program. And I'm going to turn it to Jason first.
Thanks, Kate. I just wanted to thank everyone for having us here today to speak. It's an honor. So who is NYU and how do these NPS roles make us a successful university in implementing the programs? NYU is an urban university. We are right in the middle of Manhattan, and we're a leader in global education as well. Our students who participate in our NPS programs are empowered by New York City's public transportation system. It's massive, and the infrastructure here really allows our students to travel to our sites to do their NPSS work. We also have students from nearly every state in the country, which is very important for our programming. And so what does these successful programs at NYU look like, and how are they so successful? Well, NYU leadership, from our university president down, are strong supporters and allies of all of our programs. Being in central administration, as we are, it allows us to call on the deans of our 11 colleges and schools, the Office of Financial Aid, our Student Center of Employment, our Office of Compliance and Legal Counsel, Human Resources, Public Safety, Office of Youth Programs Compliance, and the Payroll Office to make all of these great programs happen here at the university using federal work study. The university is also very committed in terms of funding our programs. NYU pays for the fingerprinting and sick time of all of our students who use federal work study here on campus in NPSS programming. So to sum up this slide, NYU is an urban university. We're centrally aligned in administration, and we get a great deal of assistance from the university in terms of our resourcing and funding. But we also understand that not every university is an urban university. So I encourage each of you to think about where you are and what you currently have to leverage your programming. It's a bit of bloom where you are planted. That's what we like to say here. Now I'd like to talk about our 2 most successful programs here at the university. And I think if I walk through these, you'll be able to see why NYU was an early adopter to the NPSS Coalition. So NYU's America Reads, America Counts program is the largest student employer at NYU, and we're one of the largest America Reads programs in the country. Over the past 27 years, we've employed more than 20,000 NYU students as public school tutors since 1997. This program is a teacher-directed program with a tremendous amount of leadership buy-in. I put that on there again because it's so important. The urban university and the public transportation all aid in the success of this program. NYU also has 3 full-time dedicated staff members, including myself, where we place anywhere from 800 to 1,000 NYU students with federal work study throughout 74 to 95 New York City school partners. That's a huge amount of tutoring that we place out into the schools. Each year, we provide about 97,000 hours of tutoring service to the New York City community. Our second program I wanted to mention is the Jumpstart at NYU. Jumpstart at NYU is a super site, which means we hire anywhere from 80 to 90 NYU students with 10 AmeriCorps spots, placing them in about 20 classrooms in early childhood centers throughout the Lower East Side and East Harlem. These tutors, these students work in teams, and they serve about 240 preschoolers throughout their time working in the program. I've been lucky enough to oversee both of these programs for the past 25 years here at NYU, and so I've gotten to experience and drive much of this growth that the university has experienced. To sum up, NPSS Coalition greatly benefits NYU. It serves as an aggregator and accelerator for us to continue to serve the community where we share in New York City. It allows us really to continue to bloom where we are planted and be one in and of the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. I'm really excited that we're able to help push this great work that you're already doing forward. With that, I will turn it over to Rito from Texas A&M Kingsville.
Thank you, Kate and Mariko, and thank you for the invitation of serving on today's panel as well. So let me talk a little bit about A&M Kingsville. We are part of the Texas A&M University system. We're located in South Texas. We're about 2 hours south of San Antonio, 2 hours north of the Mexico border. So unlike NYU, Temuco is very rural. It's a very rural area. We were established in 1925 in a legacy Hispanic serving institute. So our involvement in NPSS began very organically. The president has established a roundtable of superintendents that he meets with on a regular basis. They actually represent 7 school districts in our region. And the request from the superintendents at these meetings have often been, how can we collaborate and how can the university help us with the learning loss caused by the pandemic? And so we've been working with them throughout the last few months, and even a local school district, actually Kingsville ISD, has just voted to go on a 4-day school week starting fall 23. So their superintendent reached out to us as well and asked, how can the university assist on the Fridays, the days that the students would be available? So we are leveraging our existing partnerships with many of our off-campus and nonprofit organizations with these similar initiatives. And so we got together and said, how can we do this? And our next slide, I'm gonna have Raul Cavazos, who is our Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships, but then working in the trenches and in the trenches to make some of this work. So Raul, you wanna take over the next slide?
Well, thank you, Dr. Silva, and good morning, everyone. On the next slide, is that part of the next question, or should I go with that? Is that part of the same question, Dr. Silva?
Yes, sir. Here's talk about the priorities set by the president's cabinets.
Thank you, sir. So as a show of support and commitment to the NPSS initiative, Texas A&M University Kingsville's president's cabinet is proud to set the following priorities, which are creating new job descriptions for work studies to incorporate experiential learning, dedicate 22% of our federal work study allocation to the NPSS in partnership with 2 local school districts, pay NPSS mentors 66% over minimum wage as an incentive to participate in the program and increase the maximum work study award by up to 43% for participants.
Thank you so much to both of you. This is really, really exciting and exciting to hear that your president has made this such a priority. I think really highlights, again, the importance of getting leadership involved. With that, I will turn it over to Stephen Hodis from Grand Valley State University.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Mariko. Thanks everybody for coming today. So in contrast to Jason's institution and Rito's institution, we are largely suburban at Grand Valley. We were set up in 1960 as a regional public university in Western Michigan. We have a few branch campuses. We have about 20,000 undergrad students and about 4,000 students in master's programs like social work, education, healthcare, that sort of thing. The Next Ed Collab was established in 2021 as a social impact incubator to pilot new paths to and through the university as we seek to become both more diverse and more responsive to all of the citizens in Michigan. The tutoring work actually started early in the pandemic as a telephone homework helpline, a project of our charter schools office to reach out to Michigan families when schools were closed. It was direct to families. It used untrained student volunteers from the university. That was really popular. We did about 15,000 sessions in the first few months. And then we in the collab took that project over and systematized the curriculum, the training, the support, the supervision into a high-dose tutoring model, serving all of K-12, but primarily K-3 reading and middle school math. Unlike NYU, we do not have a fantastic public transportation system. We do not have a high density of either families or schools or tutors, and we're largely a residential institution. And so our services have been primarily virtual over the past couple of years. We're moving more to in-person now, but most of this has been virtual, and it's worked really, really well. We've delivered about 75,000 sessions, 1,500 or so tutors to about 3,000 students. Thus far, our tutors have been Grand Valley students, College of Education, as well as liberal arts students. We're in the process of adding certified teachers to our teaching staff, as well as students from other universities that are seeking to establish the kinds of relationships and partnerships that NPSS is talking about, but don't necessarily have the capacity to manage those programs, which are actually quite complex. K-12 Connect employs more students at Grand Valley and more study than all of the other programs combined. We hire about 500 students from the Grand Valley community each year. That's been growing over time, which is partly why we're starting to work with other universities. And as I mentioned, we found that the tutoring itself is actually the easy part. The hard part, the complicated part, is managing those contracts, managing those relationships, managing the evaluation, overseeing the implementation, doing the ongoing supervision of tutors, and connecting with parents and staff at our school partners. So we have a staff of about 10 people full-time just in those management roles. And we're excited that starting this fall, we'll use that management capacity to support the efforts of other institutes of higher education, both in Michigan and around the country, so that they don't have to replicate that same administrative infrastructure.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And I think that I love highlighting a great example of how this can work virtually when designed intentionally in a way that aligns with the evidence, and also love creating situations in which folks around the country don't have to recreate the wheel, because this work is challenging, and learning from others in the field who are doing it well is so crucial.
Thank you, Kate.
Of course. So my next question is for Rito. We know that setting a goal as part of the NPSS Higher Ed Coalition requires buy-in from actors at multiple levels of an institution. Tell us a little bit about which key individuals or offices you have worked with or are working with currently at your campus to collaboratively answer this call to action.
Okay, thank you, Kate. And like we mentioned before during the other slides, first of all, starting with the president's office, really important, and his cabinet, getting the mission, being able to get approval to increase allocations. That's really important. And also the engagement from our broader A&M system, who's been very supportive, both in College Station and in our offices in Washington, D.C. Our system is very committed to serving our community in what we call our backyards. And so that's really critical for us as well. And also, of course, the financial aid office, that is imperative to get them involved. They're targeting our students and our work study students. And so it's important to get the folks like Raul involved very early in the game here. We're also getting our Student Success Center involved because they have the experience in training tutors, and they've done that for a year. So to be able to get our tutors trained is really important. And also our College of Education. Although this program is open to all our students, we're trying to emphasize our students in our College of Education who aspire to be teachers, especially those who are sophomore and juniors, trying to get them in the classroom and trying to get them in front of students as early as possible is important for the students as well. It's experiential learning. It's a great way for them to learn. And then, of course, our school districts. It's so important to have a good relationship with our superintendents, with our principals, because let's face it, we're two very bureaucratic systems, and sometimes that can get in the way of accomplishing things. But when you have a really good, close-knit relationship, you can work through those. And it's important to have these intentional partnerships to want to ensure a quality program. So I'm sure there's so many more offices, but those are the key offices that we're starting to work with right off the bat.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Rito. And I think it really highlights the importance of involving a range of stakeholders on your campus and in your community, and also thinking about places in which, like the School of Education, where while it's not limited to education students, it could really be a win-win or win-win-win for P-12 students, for education students, and for the university to engage folks who are already entering youth-serving fields in this type of work while they get valuable in-classroom or in-program support or experience.
Absolutely. Yes, you're right. Win-win-win is correct.
It's what we strive for.
Correct.
So my next question is for you, Stephen. College's efforts to support P-12 students must always have to happen in collaboration with communities. Tell us a little bit about how you're partnering with schools and nonprofits to engage more college students in P-12 support roles.
Yeah, it's a great question because you know, as Rito was just mentioning, there's a lot of moving pieces here, both on the higher education side with your student employment office, with your work study office, with your legal department to review the contracts that you have with your partners, as well as dovetailing with the bureaucracy in the K-12 system. So the outreach is ongoing. And I think it's important to mention too that there's a lot of good work to be done outside of the K-12 school system in community-based organizations. It does take a web of support for kids, and these tutoring opportunities, which I think a lot of us can attest are among the higher paid work study opportunities on our campuses. Those are good jobs to put into communities as well. And you know, we found that we can train stay-at-home moms. We can train part-time workers in the community to be just as effective in these roles and to complement the work that our college students are doing. It's that partnership development and partnership maintenance, it really does take a lot of work. And I think you'll find at your institutions, I found at Grand Valley, there is a lot of that outreach effort going on all over the university, sometimes tucked away within individual colleges that you may not be aware of. And so part of a good internal communications structure at a university is to do a survey of what that work is so you don't duplicate efforts and so you can leverage the relationships that your colleagues may already have built.
Totally agreed, Stephen. And I've heard this from many institutions, that there's often so much going on, but it may be one single person or professor or department working on something, and understanding who's doing what, who you might be able to partner with, whether it's within the institution or in the community, is so crucial to, again, ensuring that we're not recreating the wheel. My next question is for you, Jason. The call to action urges colleges and universities to leverage existing funding sources and program infrastructure to help campuses return to and really exceed their pre-pandemic numbers or pre-pandemic quality of programming for placing students in P-12 support roles. What existing programs are you working to expand? And are you thinking about anything new?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Kate. So NPSS has really given us the framework here at NYU to think about strategically the next 2 to 5 years. We're going to take it 5 years out there and see how we really can get our students out in the community. Here at NYU, there are no walls. There is no official campus. You know, many of our students leave their dorms or leave their apartments, and they're part of the community. They're next to their public school they work at. And so pre-pandemic, we had about 1,300 students in the NPSS programs who were participating out in the community. During the pandemic, we were able to have about 600 to 700 working out in the community, still strong, whether it be virtually or remote. And so we're aiming to get back campus-wide to that 1,300 number. Some ways we're thinking about doing that, and coming out of the pandemic, we have this expansion plan for our programs. It mainly consists right now of the America Reads program and Jumpstart. We're hoping to provide an additional 15,000 hours of tutoring services to the community, which would bring us over about 110,000 hours per year, by taking on about 10 new Title I schools throughout the city and expanding to East Harlem, the Bronx, and other sections of Brooklyn as well. This will allow us to hire about 150 new tutors. And we'd also like to take our programming beyond the 8 to 3 public school day. So we're hoping to partner with more nonprofits within the schools and get our students working in the after-school programs, which are so important. We're also expanding our Jumpstart program. We're currently a super site, as I mentioned before, but we're taking on an additional 20 Jumpstart members, which brings us up to 100 members altogether for Jumpstart, and expanding deeper into East Harlem with 2 additional new sites and Brooklyn as well. So our plans are on way in terms of the expansion. Some new things we'd like to do. It's always been a hope and a dream of ours here to use federal work study out in the community in our partner nonprofits. So many of our students have that request. So in our 2 to 5 year plan, I hope that we can take on that piece of it to allow our students out into these nonprofits.
Thank you so much, Jason. And I agree, it's so important. And I also imagine that given student schedules, it may enable a broader set of college students to work in these types of programs, because we know that out-of-school time programs often need staff and need folks supporting students in NPSS roles on the weekend, in the evenings, over the summer, et cetera. So really, really excited to see how this goes. So my final question will really be a lightning round for each of you. And so in about one sentence or 1 to 2 sentences, what advice do you have for other colleges and universities who are aspiring to set a goal to get more students into NPSS aligned or youth serving roles? Rito, I will start with you.
Absolutely, good. I would say be very collaborative with your school districts, remove those infamous silos as soon as you can, and be very aspirational on your goals. You know, it's our requirement 7% to do that, but again, what can we do that's actually more to help out your backyard? And so I would say, again, collaborative, aspirational on your goals, and leverage your existing partnership. Don't make it too difficult. You're probably doing some things like this already, and just expand and develop what you're already working on.
Thank you. Stephen.
Okay, a little deep in the weeds. Invest a lot in training and programmatic supervision getting college students to show up regularly over the course of a year, which is often the commitment with high dosage tutoring. There's a lot of moving pieces. Their schedules change. If they're early in their college careers, freshmen especially, they may just be adapting to the rigors of college life and managing their own time. So spend more time than you have to herding all the ducks.
Great advice. Jason.
I have 2 tips I'd like to share. I just want to reiterate that whole bloom where you are planted motto, and really meet with staff and administration throughout the university to see what's happening, get a good catalog and aware of what's happening at the university and how you can leverage the resources that you currently have. And my second advice is to go slow and use a pilot program. There's no need to have 1,000 tutors out in the community on day one. You can start with 10, 15, but have the belief and the power to know that you can do it. It just takes time and planning.
Excellent advice and totally agree, Jason. Raul, we'll close it out with you.
Well, thank you. So I just want to reiterate what Dr. Silva said as far as leveraging the partnerships. We do work closely with our local school districts. So we do have existing partnerships. For example, we're just closing out our the 3rd year for the Federal Work Study Experiment. So we're leveraging those partnerships and utilizing those contacts to enforce this program, the NPSS initiative. Our student access department, it also works with like the TRIO programs. They have existing partnerships, so we're utilizing those partnerships to also leverage what we have in place. So I think one of the things I really liked about and that I heard is what Mr. Schultz said as far as going slow, using a pilot program. So using the existing partnerships, we want to make sure we leverage the partnerships and build off of that, and then just go on from there. I also like the part about I think Dr. Silva said, let me go back, and being aspirational. So that ties into what Mr. Schultz said, where you set up a plan. A 2 to 5 year plan is what they're looking at as well. So set a target and just go on from there. And Mr. Hodas also talked about investing in training. And I think that's also key, because you want to make sure that your students are prepared to serve the students out of the community, so that we can meet the goal of the NPSS partnership.
Thank you, Raul. What a great way to sum this up. And also thank you for pointing out TRIO and other programs that may not be funded through federal work study, but are often great partners in this work, and a great way to support students in the community, and often coming to your campus. So with that, we'll close our panel, but I really want to thank each of you for taking the time in what I know is often the busiest month in the life of someone working for a university. So really appreciate each of you sharing your expertise and your experience and taking the time to connect with this group today. Mariko, I know we have a couple questions. I will turn it over to you, and I really encourage participants, if you have questions, whether they're for our panelists or whether they're about the NPSS or the NPSS Higher Education Coalition, please put them in the Q&A function here. I'm hopeful we'll have time for all of them, but if not, we will include answers or links to additional information in our follow-up email. So please add questions as they come up. Mariko.
Thank you so much, Kate. And thank you to our wonderful panelists for all that great insight about how you've moved towards setting a goal and into implementation at your campuses. I'm so excited to see what more you do as part of the NPSS Higher Ed Coalition. And as Kate mentioned, please do feel free, audience members, to submit questions. Right now, we have a few to start with. We'll zoom out. I'll answer them in order that they are received, but starting, we want to zoom out to a question that might be helpful for the entire audience. If you do have questions specific to universities or panelists, we welcome you to submit those as well, and we can share them. But the first question we got is, if our campus were to sign on with this initiative, would the college be responsible for meeting the 15% community service spending requirement beginning in year one? So the answer is no. This is a longer-term initiative, as you heard our panelists speak to, and as we emphasize in the NPSS, this is really a 2-year push to work towards 15% in federal work-study community service jobs over the next 2 years by summer 2025. So when we think about tracking progress towards that goal, the NPSS would ask for updates on how institutions are doing on an annual basis, but we completely understand that this takes time. And as our panelists mentioned as well, you don't necessarily have to start big right away. You can work towards this, hopefully starting in summer or fall of this year, really exploring existing pathways to community service roles focused on P12 support that you already have, or begin brainstorming about how to launch something new in the coming year, and then build on that work over the next 2 years by 2025. That said, we also recognize that while a key priority is pandemic recovery in the P12 space, this work is long-term and enduring and will continue to benefit universities, P12 schools, districts, and community organizations for many years to come. And so we also encourage you to think of this as a great starting point to think about how to cultivate those relationships in a sustainable way to where far beyond 2025, you'll still continue to be able to innovate, create opportunities for your college students to serve in these types of roles, and provide ongoing engagement that we know is very, very important to colleges and universities and their regional communities throughout the country. A follow-up question to that is, considering this is a voluntary initiative, will there be a penalty if the college falls short of meeting the goal of 15%? And the answer again is no. So we really emphasize that this is a celebratory, aspirational effort. We want to uplift progress and growth towards the goal. There's no consequence for not meeting the goal. We encourage you to set certainly aspirational efforts to devote 15% of federal work-study funds to community service, or maybe even more, as we've heard from panelists and other members of the Higher Ed Coalition, exceeding 20 or more percent. And that's wonderful. But we also know that each university is positioned within a unique community context. Each university has insights about how to best approach the goal given that situational positioning. And so again, the NPSS, as well as the broader Biden-Harris administration, really emphasizes community-driven solutions. And so maybe 15% sounds like a workable goal in your context, or maybe you can exceed that. Maybe the goal might look like setting a little bit lower than 15%. And that's why we also have the second pathway to just aim to increase the total number of post-secondary students in these P12 support positions through a number of efforts. So federal work-study can be one of them. Maybe if your campus, as some are closer to 5% dedicated to community service roles right now, and 15% seems really out of reach, that's okay. Start a little bit smaller, or think about a total number of students that you'd hope to engage in this type of work over the next 2 years and beyond. Again, the effort to increase the total number of students in these roles can draw on all sorts of existing initiatives at your campus, be that credit-bearing opportunities, internship programs, other pathways to paid positions, as our panelists have talked about. So this is, again, really an opportunity to uplift great practices that we know are being implemented all across the country, and help universities find opportunities to collaborate within their own communities, as well as learn from from one another and how this type of work might be possible given all the unique contextual conditions. And I believe our panelists really offered great insight into the many ways that this work can be done, whether you choose to focus on early childhood or elementary, middle, or high school support, whether that's in person or virtual or a combination of those, whether that's focusing on tutoring or post-secondary transition coaching. Again, we encourage you to consult with colleagues on campus, partner with your school districts and nonprofits are, and then build from there. So all this to say, the NPSS looks forward to uplifting great examples of practice, no penalties towards not meeting the goal. We encourage you to be aspirational and are excited to provide the support needed for campuses all around the country to do this work in a way that makes sense for their communities. Additionally, so moving into some specific questions, I know there are some thoughts around implementation and study space. And I think perhaps our colleagues in financial aid and at Texas might be especially well positioned to address this question, but I also invite Stephen and Jason to offer your insight as well. The question is, how was Texas able to increase the federal work study award, given that isn't that dictated by federal work study and not individual institutions? So if you wouldn't mind, Rito and Raul, providing a little bit more information about how you went about that on your campus. And I know our other panelists have also provided initiatives to make these positions particularly appealing to undergrads.
Thank you, Mariko. And that's a great question. For federal work study regulations provide a great deal of flexibility regarding awards to students. There are no regulatory award minimums and maximums. The only thing is that they are limited to unmet need. So on our slide, that's why we did say up to 66%, because if a student has, say, $2,000 of unmet need, then that would actually be their eligibility for the federal work study program.
Great, thank you so much, Raul. And I just want to create a space in case Stephen and Jason would like to add anything about how you've gone about collaborating with your financial aid office or others on your campus to really help make these positions more appealing to undergraduates, particularly when it comes to our understanding that lots of institutions, as well as nonprofits and districts, are competing with other types of employment that make it hard sometimes to heavily recruit undergrads for these types of tutoring or other youth supporting roles.
I'll say that our work study folks were delighted to have this opportunity, really, because to be able to take 300, 400, 600, however many hundreds of students who are eligible for work study and have one central partner, which is how we think of ourselves as an employment partner, who's going to handle all of the logistics and all of the details. Doing work study programs out in the community, if you have to manage dozens of those relationships, is obviously more complex and more time consuming for the work study folks. So we found them to be terrific partners. There is a question about competing with other employers. You know, as minimum wages have gone up way beyond the minimum wage level, at least around Grand Rapids and other places, campus employment in general has sometimes lagged in attractiveness, either because of the wages it can pay compared to, say, Chipotle, or because of the nature of the work. So one of the other things about the tutoring jobs that makes them attractive is that not only do they pay relatively well, but the work is quite rewarding for students. And we're actually in a study with NSSA to see how the tutoring work inflects the tutors in terms of their own career paths and what they find satisfying about college and about the work in general. So even if you may not be able to pay quite as much as a local employer, the fact that the work is really meaningful and rewarding gives it a big boost.
Our programs would not be as successful as they are. I speak for most of us in terms of financial aid. They are your best friend in making any expansion or any participation in NPSS programs possible, in my opinion. We also reward our students with additional federal work study for these NPSS roles here at NYU's campus, as well as career development. Our Office of Student Employment has a whole series of trainings and designed, trainings they can attend for career development, career paths. I don't want to be a tutor, but I've been tutoring for 4 years in the America Reads program. How does that help my resume? And really working with our students to, come out of the NPSS roles successful in the amount of work they dedicated in time. So.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for those wonderful insights. And I know I speak from experience as well as Kate. The two of us also started our careers in education as federal work study students employed by programs like America Reads and others that offer tutoring, mentoring, post-secondary transition coaching, and other supports to P-12 students. And so I would argue that we're testament to the impact of these types of roles in creating pathways to professional opportunities and a dedicated career in education, or other professional pathways where these roles really offer a wonderful entry point into these great types of positions that can have a wonderful impact, not only on the P-12 students, but on the folks providing the services. So thank you so much. And now as we close the call, we'd just like to emphasize some key next steps to answer the President's call to action and join the NPSS Higher Education Coalition. So again, just to clarify, what does it mean to join the coalition? Well, it looks like setting a goal to increase the number of your students from your university or college who are serving in NPSS aligned roles supporting P-12 students. And again, think about the many different ways that this can look. It can be tutoring, mentoring, success coaching, or any one of the 5 key support areas that are aligned with NPSS. Additionally, that can be a specific federal work study percentage goal, or it can just be a general goal to increase the total number of students serving in these positions based on where you're starting and where you hope to go over the next 2 years. The way you can do that is submitting your goal through the NPSS. We have an easy online form on our website that will ask you, specific prompts to help think about a pathway towards implementation. And so that might include, what's your percentage of federal work study dedicated to these roles now? And what type of goal do you hope to set for the future? Or what existing programs do you think you might collaborate with on your campus to create opportunities for students to serve in these positions? That said, the online form does request a substantial amount of information just to help us support you along your path to implementation. So if you see the online goal setting form and you feel like you're not quite ready to submit it in full yet, we also have a form where you can simply ask for more information, and we're happy to follow up with you. You can also request technical assistance. So if you take a look at the goal setting form and think, oh, I'm not quite sure how to move forward on some of these things, technical assistance is a great place to start. So please submit that form on our website as well. And lastly, we highly encourage you to join one of 2 upcoming webinars over the next 2 weeks, which will focus on implementation strategies. And so all those points that I mentioned of key considerations on engaging collaborators at your campus, thinking about transportation pathways, thinking about how to engage partners in your community, and so forth. We look forward to having a number of additional great panelists and speakers to share their insights with you. So please sign up for those webinars on our website. And then lastly, don't hesitate to reach out to us with general inquiries. One additional venue to connect with us is in office hours. And so every Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. ET, I'll be holding office hours for folks interested in the Higher Ed Coalition. If you register for the office hours, you can just stay on with me today and we'll hop into office hours immediately after this call. If you want to think about it with your campus or your colleagues a little bit more, feel free to join in any of the coming weeks. And if that time doesn't work for you, we're always open to connecting via email, or feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we'd be glad to follow up with all the resources that we talked about in this presentation and invitations to engage further. So with that, Kate, any closing thoughts?
I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today. again, thank our panelists and you, Mariko, for sharing some great information. Really look forward to connecting with everyone soon. Have a great rest of your day.